Hello everyone, welcome to the Emerging Feminine podcast. I'm Sameena and I'm here today with Melonie, who is just a drop from heaven, who I met a couple of years ago. I will let her introduce herself and tell you a little bit about what she does.
Okay, hi, and thank you for having me on this. I'm Melonie and I am an educator and a specialised menstrual health expert. So I do things to do with wombs and menstruation and periods for parents, for mothers, for women, and for educational organisations. And I'm also the drum woman, so I make drums and I sell drums and I teach people how to make drums and I bring people together around drums and the healing that they bring. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah. So Melonie and I first got in touch with each other. I think, Melonie, did you get in touch with me over Awaken the Goddess? I think you did, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then I came and had a womb massage. Is that what you call them? I can't even remember now.
Yeah, womb massage.
Yeah, so I came and had a womb massage, which was lovely. And then I came to your red tent retreat weekend,
Yeah.
and that was absolutely fabulous. And it's just, yeah, like Melonie does amazing work with women, and like the way she holds space is just so, like, as soon as you get in her presence, like, you just feel safe. So, you know, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass, that is really true.
I'm accepting it, please. I'm receiving.
So I asked Melonie to come and have a chat with me today because I just wanted to talk about periods, about blood, about women, about patriarchy, about all that good stuff, about wombs, you know. And I thought, who better than Melonie to talk about all this stuff with me, you know. So Melonie, tell me how you first got into this type of work.
Wow. Well, it's a weird series of events over kind of parallel over many years. So I first, generally, I had bad periods from being 14. Became a teacher at 21, nearly 22, and was given PSHE, so personal social health education, so which is all about the body. It's the sex education element of things. And then quickly realised that wasn't taught in the school I was in, and where it was taught really badly. And I came from a place of not having any puberty education, not having any period education from my family, from being in a dark room watching a baby's head kind of crowning and then being given a box of Tampax at school and having no kind of understanding of my body. And so when I was given that, I kind of felt, I went on a course and I felt empowered to, and a sense of passion around changing the lives of the young people that I was teaching and the offer that the school was giving. So that carried on, and I continued on this valiant journey of trying to improve the way that young people are taught about their bodies and what happens to them and what might happen to them, and what their self-esteem and body image. And then my periods got worse and worse and worse, and I was diagnosed with endometriosis when I was they started to get so bad when I was 27 that I couldn't go to work, or if I was at work and it happened, I'd be rolling around on the floor in agony. It interrupted relationships and work and holidays and everything. It became a dread. And when I was about 33, they finally listened to me and diagnosed me with endometriosis. I'd already, just a couple of years before that, I'd learned Reiki and Reiki drumming, and started kind of collecting loads of sound healing modalities, and just loved it. So this is the kind of parallel to what was going on. And I was looking for some things around healing stuff, and I found a Heal the Womb retreat by my now teacher Claire Spink, and shouldn't really have found it. It wasn't something that I was, used to looking for or anything. It just popped up, and I went, and that put me in a place where I was sat in a room with lots of different women, and we had a sharing circle. People were talking about their first period stories. They were talking about their current period stories. They were talking about what it was like to be in their bodies. We did a load of practices, including a reclaiming our own menarche, so our own first period, talking about the kind of stuff that we were holding in that. And that just changed my course slightly. I realized the power in women gathering, the absolute fear I had of wanting to share and be vulnerable with these other women. And then the absolute healing that came from me trusting myself to be able to do that. So yeah, I started gathering women as a red tent and as a drum circles. I then later trained with Claire in the womb and fertility massage. I learned tons about menstrual cycle awareness, which I then started to take into the schools that I was working with. And yeah, it just generally kind of snowballed from there. The huge impact that gathering women was having became part of my being, things that I felt I was really called to do. And that's what I do. With everything that I do, I'm either gathering women or working on their wombs or supporting them reconnecting to their body or helping their daughters reconnect to their body.
Yeah, I love that. The fact that it was an organic journey.
Mm.
Sometimes people think, oh, I want to do X, and then they try and do it. Whereas when you start doing something and it just merges through life experience into something else, that's just, I just find that really phenomenal. And it's just like the river of life going through. But, also the fact that I remember, maybe I was reading in your newsletter or something quite some time ago about the fact that you gave up your job to carry on doing this work full time. And I really admired that. And it's just, the trust to just, it almost feels like a parachute, like you just jump out. Like I'm in a job,
Mm.
and the thought of just letting go of that monthly salary to do something, to do the work that I really want to do, is really scary. It's
Mm.
like, how
Mm.
did you do that?
It was quite an interesting thing. It was a desire at first, because my Reiki clients and my sound healing work was becoming a little bit more um, a little bit more desired. I was getting more clients, and I was getting such joy and fulfillment from working with people who left my space lighter, um, glowing, even if they'd spent their whole time sobbing, there was a real shift or healing. And the schoolwork that I was doing, which I absolutely loved, started to turn quite sour. Um, uh, Again, in that organic way, there was a big series of events that I think really was the universe giving me a prod and just saying, do it now, do it now. And I was like, no, like, I have a good wage, I don't want to do it now. And the series of events went that the current head teacher that I'd been under for so many years decided to retire early, and I had planned to ask if I could go part-time when she retired at the end of the year. So I was forced to kind of go to her and say, this is what I want to do. She agreed that. So I was working 3 days a week in a school, employed for another 2 years, and then 2, 3, 4 days a week doing the other stuff. The work in the school increasingly became miles and miles and lifetimes away from what I went into teaching for. Um, I wanted children to love learning, and I felt like the education system wasn't really doing that. My opinion, It was testing and testing and creating not what I wanted out of education. And then I started working for, well, I was working already for a local council with my education stuff, and I was given more work. So I left the school and went into this freelance work, which was paying my bills. But then the the relationship between me and my boss, the person who was in charge of everything that I did, um, started to feel like I wasn't valued, that my work was being used widely when I'd been paid for small amounts. There was a real shift of what I wanted compared to what somebody else was doing. And I was petrified because I was taking away all of my rent money and I was living on my own, you know, and having to do that in London. But I made a decision that it was better for my mental health, my emotional health, my sense of what's right in the world to just let go of that as well. And that's when I became full-time the drum woman and meloniesiret.com and just free fell, you know, hoping there was a parachute. And yeah, I'm I have never been happier.
Wow.
Never been happier. A huge thing.
That's amazing, you know, that trust. And you know, there's uncertainty in it, isn't there? But then there's that fallback that you know that you're relying on yourself and no one else. Like,
Mm,
you make your life basically.
yeah, I have to. Where I put my energy is where the kind of, you know, they say where the attention goes, the energy flows. And I've watched that happen with this being self-employed now. There's things lift and then things drop, and I realize that I've not been really tending to them. And so it's like having a lovely garden
Mm,
and watching it bloom. And sometimes it goes really quick, and that's beautiful. And but there are these seasonal kind of waves, and I don't know. I'm so grateful that I listened and made the decision. I remember sitting with my laptop open 11:30 at night with my resignation written, and it had to be in by midnight. And I hadn't really planned to resign, and it was just in me. It was like you've got to do that now. And so I pressed it, and I was like, and I hadn't told anybody that I was going to do it, so it was quite a shock to everybody. But yeah, I couldn't. It's my life now,
mm,
and it's great, you know. I
yeah.
haven't been so happy. Uh, I hadn't been this happy for a very long time
Wow,
uh, with
that's
work.
beautiful. So let's talk about menstrual cycles. So, you know, I'm sure you probably have the same story, if not more, to elaborate. But, you know, about 5 years ago, I started really learning more about my menstrual cycle and tracking it, in the sense that knowing where I was in my cycle and what that might be doing to my emotions. And you know, I used to find it very challenging, where at some points I just did not feel like doing anything, and I just felt like I was in a complete lull, and I used to despair at those times. And now, knowing my cycle, I realize that that's a very specific part of my cycle that I will move through, and then I embrace it, rather than, you know, it used to really affect me. I used to
Mm,
think, oh God, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just be normal? Why am I constantly up here and then down there? You know, and it's just like completely changed the way I can be in the world. I know that, yeah, you know, at that time, I'm going to get creative. I'm going to get ideas. I'm going to want to do stuff. I'm going to be super productive, 7 a.m. till 8 p.m., no problem type of thing, you know. Yeah, it's changed my life. Tell me about your experience.
yeah. So after that Heal the Womb retreat, which I think was something like 2013, 14, I bought Lisa Lister's Code Red. I bought Miranda Gray's Red Moon. I started to research everything to do with the menstrual cycle, because we'd done some practices that split the cycle into 4 seasons and crossover points and thresholds. And we walked around these seasons, which is something I do now, and just it amazes me to watch people experience what's going on for them and get their wisdom from it. But yeah, we walked through what would be your winter, so your bleed time, and my body was, telling me that it wanted to rest. I got images of caves and fluffy beds and being thrown chocolate, but not actually, having to do, just being able to be. And there was something in one of my first images that was sort of like, you really would like love at this point. I really wanted to be nurtured. And then and the part before that, the autumn, the bit which was where I was getting PMT. So I used to get real heavy, strong inner critic, very loudly telling me what was wrong in my life, what I needed to do, what I needed to change. But it was so loud and quite outrageous, and I'd get a day where I'd be really teary, a day where I'd be really angry. And about now, because I'm in that space now, I'd get a time when I'd lose my words. And I think that was the first thing to do with menstrual cycle awareness that I got. My boyfriend at the time said, you keep doing that. You keep doing that. We noticed this pattern of just before my period, I would be going, saying 3 or 4 things before getting to the right one. And this image that I drew had all this energy all over the place, and it felt like I couldn't. It was just all too much. Everything was too much, and there was this real sense of a gentle withdrawal from the world, yeah. And so I kept on reading, and I went into my own practice of observing my own menstrual cycle, started charting it, and watched these things that just kept happening over and over again. And on the same day across the cycle, I realized that my cycle can be anything from about 28 to 33 days. So sometimes when I was going, oh, this hasn't happened yet, it was because it was a longer cycle. And that sense of being able to work, go from 8 till whatever. If I'm observing my cycle and my energy levels, it's like in that summer part, I will wake up at 7 o'clock and I can go till 2 in the morning, and I can be really full of energy. But if I haven't rested down and when I'm bleeding, that doesn't happen. I've really noticed a peak of it when I'm looking.
So interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, because if, like lots of us, we tend to just keep going. Our society is set for us to be as productive as possible. So you're either working all the time, or you're working and then you're tending to a family or a partner, that is just going. And I realized that if I cut out time here to rest, to do what I needed to do, because my body was knackered. I was so tired. I can't think now how I dragged myself through a school day when I was bleeding. Just can't even remember what it was like. That sense of, just can't wait to get home, need to get home. Now, if I can rest, then my energy level kind of peaks and troughs, and I can plan my time for that. It's just, it revolutionized my life.
Yeah, it really does. So you said what you said about society wants us to be as productive as possible, but I'm sure you'll agree with me that that's the sort of patriarchal paradigm that we have in society, that expects us to be as productive as possible, in the same way that like if we didn't have a menstrual cycle, we would just be on that keel going like that, whereas we're not. We're like that, And it's only by following that that we can be as productive as possible. Because like you say, if you
Absolutely.
don't take your time to rest during the time you're supposed to be, like your inner knowledge and your inner wisdom is telling you rest now, you don't do that, you can't be productive later, you know. And it's just, I think so much about, like, how can we change the world? How does the world need to change in order for it to be all right for a woman to just say at work, actually, you know what, not going to really do much over the next 2 days because I'm on my period, I'm cancelling my meetings and this and that, it's my time to rest, you know. How many times do you have your like you have little sparks of wisdom during your period? You have these little downloads, or I don't know what you want to call them, but it's just things that you're like, oh yeah, that's so true. And then as you start getting your creative and your energy sort of that, then you can start, you've planted that seed during your
Hmm.
bleed, and then
Hmm.
that grows and you have the
Hmm.
energy to grow that because you've rested and you've allowed that.
Hmm.
You know, it's just like, what do we need to do to the world to change that, Melonie? Like, we need to do it.
Magic wand at the ready. That's what it is. No, I think what needs to happen perhaps first is that everybody needs to know about this cyclical, um, this cycle of hormones, of energy, of inward and outward, of sociable and not so sociable, and um, to know about it, and in a way that makes it so clear that it's a truth. Because I think at the moment it's kind of on the sidelines. There are people like you and I are really subscribed to it, but not everybody else, and it's still so taboo and shameful, even though it's much more high profile. Period poverty is through the roof, you know, in profile. There's still tons of negativity about periods. um, so I think if it, I don't know, some scientific study, some research, it needs to be kind of documented like that so that it can be seen as a real thing. Um, and then legislations and things can come into play, and people could perhaps go on more kind of mainstream courses, or it becomes taught to the young people. You know, that's what I tried to do in schools, teach it to the kids, because if you can teach it to the children, it's only going to be 20 years before they're having children and teaching it to their children, and you change like that, don't you? But yeah, I think it it feels like a huge wall is in place at this moment for changing workplaces, but that wall is slowly having its bricks taken out
Yeah,
when people are starting to notice and go, actually, yeah, that's really true, that's happening. It's not that I'm less productive in a month. In fact, now I'm more productive than I ever have been.
yeah,
I put all my jobs out and I put them along across my diary in a way where I can access the planning area of my cycle, the doing area of my cycle, the reflecting and editing area, and the resting. And I can do more than I was doing beforehand
yeah,
because I'm utilizing my energy better.
yeah,
But I think it's very much about how do you get it out there to everybody, um, so that everybody understands, and because it's not well known still.
yeah. Exactly. You know, I mean, like, when, to me, it just seems like such a normal part of life. And, you know, with Awaken the Goddess, I'm sort of talking to people and mixing with people who this is just their life as well. And then I'll be speaking to some of my friends, and obviously that you're like, oh yeah, they're my friends, they're on the same page as me, they're my friends for a reason. But then, like, they'll say something that'll hit you in the face, and you'll think, wow, your reality is really not my reality. Like, you are
Yeah.
not in touch with that at all. Like, your whole cycle, you don't even know the power in it, you know. And it's exactly what you say, it's not that we're less. This is how women are portrayed because of the fact that we have our cycle. It's the fact that you know, where we can't be as productive because we need to take time out, we're emotional and hormonal and irrational. Oh, fuck off, you know. Like, none of that stuff. No, seriously, like, none of that stuff is true. Like, the only reason why, you know, we might seem irrational is because at certain times of the month we're like, no, actually, I'm not dealing with that shit that I would ordinarily, that idiocy of yours that I'd ordinarily put up with. I'm not putting up with it for these few days, you know. Like, if you want to think that's irrational, well, then go right ahead. But I'm sorry, we need more irrational people in the world to speak up and say, hang on a minute, what is this shit, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, it just, oh my God, it just makes me like, yeah. So I think it's so, it really is sad how many women have grown up not knowing about this and are not exposed to it. You know, I was lucky. I read Lisa Lister's book as well, you know, and I think that I read that book, and that's when I came off of hormonal contraception. You know, before that, I knew that, yeah, this isn't really good for me, but it's something you sweep under the rug because you don't want to have to worry about getting pregnant and all that sort of stuff,
mm,
you know. But I read that and I thought, no, I can't do this to my body. I'm not.
mm,
And I was missing my cycle. I missed the ebbs and flows of the just the
mm,
emotion, you know. I missed it so much because I had the implant, you know, the contraceptive implant in my arm, that little thing that
mm.
you get put in. And yeah, it really, I felt like I wasn't me,
Yeah.
if
Well,
you know.
interestingly, I had a same thing. Um, when they diagnosed me with endometriosis, they put me on the pill. I had a choice between a Mirena coil and the pill, or to go and have children, which, you know, was a sore spot at the time because um, my ex had just decided he didn't want children, you know, so it was a real like, ouch, you know, I don't know where I am with that either. So I went on the pill for 18 months, and I sat there one day on the sofa and was just sat and like almost like not really there. And I realized that I hadn't really laughed recently. I wasn't silly. I'm quite a silly, jokey person. There was none of that. I had no libido. I felt a bit like a zombie. And I realized sitting there that what my cycle was doing was giving me these ebbs and flows, and the pill had just flatlined me and taken away who I was. And the previous time I was on the pill, I was 15 until I was 21. So I guess I didn't really know who I was at that point anyway. And a lot of my body image foundations were laid at that point that were not very good. So being distanced from myself was probably quite a good thing in that sense. And I'd been off the pill for so long that when I did go back on it, I really noticed this zombiness of
Yeah,
me. Um, and that's not what I am, and that's not what we are as women, you know. We have these ebbs and flows, and yes, we are emotional, and yes, we are not irrational, but more uh, happy to speak out at things. And sometimes it comes out irrationally because perhaps we haven't had that opportunity to speak out before, and suddenly it kind of builds up, you know, like quite a lot of women in perimenopause start to say the things that they've really wanted to say because the body's changing, and it's like, I'm not putting up with this shit anymore. Say it, do it,
yeah,
go for the things you want in your life, your dreams, you know. um, so that whole cyclical nature has been ignored by our current society, you know.
yeah.
It's quite sad.
It is really. And you know, the thing you say about when you know, between the ages of 15 and 21, you know, so when you are a teenager, you really are trying to figure yourself out, and that can go right up until you're sort of your early 20s. And for me, it was beyond. Like, I don't think I really started finding myself until I was in my 30s. I got to,
Mm,
you know, I got separated from my first husband when I was 29, and then it was from the age of about 30 onwards that I really started to realize who I am and walk my own path. You know, I moved away from the religion I was brought up in, which was super difficult, and you know, there were lots of other things. And how many youngsters get put on um, hormonal contraceptive because of painful periods or heavy bleeding? And it's like, why would you do that to someone who doesn't even know who they are yet? You're like literally dulling them.
mm.
And then
Yeah, yeah. I was 15 and I took myself to the doctors on my own accord because my periods were painful, and they just gave me the pill. Um, and the pain went away, and then by the time I was 21, the pain was as bad as it was, if not worse than beforehand. So something in me was not agreeing with the pill and was shouting and screaming at me to kind of take note, but I wasn't listening. Um, and now it's almost like the go-to thing if you've got period pain or missing periods or irregular periods or really bad PMT or acne or whatever. It is a really easy way to a really easy thing that's given, rather than look at what actually was causing that pain. So I was 33 when I was diagnosed with endometriosis, and I'd been going to the doctors about my period pain since I was 15. Um, I went back numerous times in my 20s. Once I was told, I went go back to say, can I be tested for PCOS? Could it be that? And I was told, literally just told, no, it's not PCOS. You're just overweight, lose weight. And then that was it. That was the end of the appointment. And that was from a woman, and it took all that time for somebody to be 33, for somebody to nearly 20 years, for someone to even go, okay, yeah, we think it might be something called endometriosis. When I already knew that by that point. And we'll do an internal scan. Nobody had even looked at me before. Nobody had done anything. I've been to the hospital twice and in pain,
Wow,
and was just given painkillers and told it was period pain.
that's terrible. But you actually did solve your period pain yourself, didn't you? Well, you did
Yeah.
what, castor oil packs and things like that. What did you do?
I did quite a lot of things. I did it all at the same time. So what I know is all of it worked for me. I did. So I was on the pill, and I prepared to come off of the pill. And by doing that, I did castor oil packs, which are really good for inflammation, scarring, endometriosis. I did them at least twice a week. And in that time, I also laid with my hands over my womb space and kind of connected, breathed down into that space. I was not connected to my body, particularly from my boobs down to my kind of thighs, and realized that disconnect, and started to try and recultivate a relationship with my body. So that was a huge part of it. I cut out caffeine and dairy. I upped B vitamins and reduced red meat and upped fiber. Um, I did castor oil packs. I did some yoni steams. I did I bought cloth pads, and I did a huge amount of talking to my body as my friend and part of my body, myself. Um, I would wash myself in the shower and spend time washing my belly and just making friends with myself, because all I'd done was send tons of negativity to myself for years about how painful my body was, how horrible it was for doing that, how big it was, how this it was, how that it was, and it was just a constant stream of self-hatred. Um, and then I came off the pill, and I continued those things, and then I bled, and I had my first ever pain-free period. Absolutely pain-free. I didn't even know you could have a pain-free period, and was just elated. And I was supposed to go back to the endometriosis clinic, and I pushed it back a few months and was like, I just want to keep going with this and see where we go. And I just kept having pain-free periods. And so when I went back and told them what I'd been doing and said that I didn't need to have the treatments and things anymore, and I've come off the pill, they said, when you need us, you'll have to go at the back of the queue. And
So no sort of, oh wow, tell us about these amazing things so we can pass it
no,
on.
no, let's even just like, I know it's not medically proven or whatever, but at least let's create a little list of what other people have done to get relief from this debilitating disease. And what's happened now, so that it's been 5, nearly 6 years since I did that, and I came off the pill. And I've had some painful periods since, and each of them have been when I've not been looking after myself. So perhaps I'm just eating junk food for the entire month, or I've been burning myself out and not listening and not slowing down. Or sometimes when I've done tons and tons of work with lots of women and then not cleansed, cleared myself, sometimes I get a bad one. But it's not what it used to be. It was pain free. I think in the first 3 years I'd had like 3 bad periods, and they were every month. And now I'm nearly 6 years, and I had a few in a row not long ago that were bad, and it's just a wake-up call to come back to myself. And so then my last period was really lovely because I had to come back to myself, you
It's
know.
amazing how the body makes you take
Yeah,
care of it, you know, like.
yeah, yeah. My womb really screams at me if I am not looking after myself, um, and will tell me that there's stuff I need to change. And I feel that it's a huge scale of endometriosis. You've got like organ fusion right at the end. You know, that's horrendous. People's bladders get fused to their the womb, and it can become all twisted and very painful. Before that, you've got lots of cysts and things in the body, and before that there may not be any actual, not cysts, adhesions, and before that you might have no adhesions, and the pain changes across the whole thing. There's no real, if it's here it's really painful all the time, or if it's there it's never painful. There's no correlation but really between the pain and what's in the body. And I feel like if you can catch it in those first 2 bits and you can make the changes, you can really see a difference in the quality of life that you have. I'm not so sure about, well, I know you can make changes if you've got organ fusion, but it's a bit more difficult because there's a lot that's happened and you might need the surgery. But and I think so many people with endometriosis feel that there's no hope. They're told there's no hope. I was told there's no cure, you know. And so what's the point? You might as well just live in that pain. And that day when I sat on the sofa and went, where am I? I'm not here anymore. I'm this zombie, was a day where I made a decision to change, to see what I could do. And it made a huge difference. Huge difference.
Yeah. Tell me about the womb work that you do, Melonie. So you do womb massage. Tell me about the benefits and about how you got into it, because you have regular massages, womb massages yourself, don't you?
Yeah.
So tell me,
I think everybody should.
yeah.
Yeah. So Claire Spink, who was the lady who ran the Heal the Womb retreat, she's developed a womb and fertility massage. It's come from a melding of many kind of indigenous cultures, kind of practices. It's got some things from kind of Arvidio and mesotherapy. It's a massage of the back and the abdomen. It's gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever had the pleasure to learn, and the honor to be able to give to others, and to receive. And so yeah, the benefits they're huge. That it helps balance hormones, it helps increase blood flow. There's a really low blood flow, 5% blood flow to the womb, so it increases that. It removes kind of old and stagnant stuff, and with the blood flow and the increase coming through, it's moving the old stuck stuff. It can help reduce scarring, and it can help take apart adhesions and things like that. Tension, the tension that's held in the pelvic bowl and in the back of the body, in the sacrum, it helps reduce all of that. There's so many physical benefits. It supports egg quality. If you've got cysts, it can help reduce them, and fibroids. It's just amazing. But then for me also, the biggest part is the emotional, mental support that it gives. It works with different points on the body, as well as kind of tapping you into your womb, reconnecting you to heart and womb. And you can be doing things like realizing that what's been going on has been a pattern that's been going through your family forever. Or you might be just being massaged, and suddenly all these images and pictures and words come up about some something that you've been holding inside, a load of guilt or a load of shame, and you've pushed it right down and you've not let it out, and it's kind of bubbling and it needs to be lifted. And so in terms of the fertility side of it, one of the biggest challenges to fertility is stress. And if we've got emotions and things, or we've had sad things happen, like we've had a miscarriage or we've had abuse in our life, we might have held these things in our body, and they're kind of holding us together and holding us tight. And if this work can help move things and shift things, then there's space and freedom and juiciness, and fertility can come back. But on the flip side of it, for menstrual stuff or for general well-being or rites of passage, like perimenopause and menopause, the fact that it brings you into what's going on for you, and it starts to explore it for you, it's just huge. It opens up so much. And like you say, I receive regularly. When I first started to receive, it was very much a physical thing that was going on. I'd feel areas of tenderness where tension, perhaps adhesions, were being released. I was very, very tight all around that area, and I'd cry a lot. There'd be a lot coming up around responsibility that I felt for certain members of my family and making sure they were okay, when realistically that wasn't something that I needed to do. Loads of stuff came up, and then it started to shift. So after maybe, I don't know, 5, 6 shares, it started to shift to where I was going in my life, what I was doing with my life. One of them, just before I came back to Essex from London, during one of them, there was these words lifting up, and I couldn't quite work out what they were. And then I said to my friend who was massaging me, I'm going to say some words. And she was like, go for it. And I opened my mouth, and the words were, I can be a mum, I can be a mum. And I'd had this somewhere in me telling me that I couldn't, and it was like, it was coming up to say you could be. And it's huge. There's so much. I feel like I'm waffling on about it. I could waffle on about it all day.
Isn't that part of the work and the healing and the journey of having a womb massage, is that it brings up stuff, like we've got all this stuff going on all the time in our head, and we don't necessarily give ourselves the time to process it, to understand it, to know what it means, and to voice it. I mean, I remember reading your newsletters at around that time when you made that decision, and you talked about the fact that this whole wanting a child thing had come up, and I remember thinking, wow, like that, even actually talking about it now, it's giving me little goosebumps, that this whole thing around having a child, whether you're with someone or you're not with someone, or whether you want one or you don't want one, and realizing you definitely do want one, and worrying that is it the right time, is it too late, do I do it by myself, am I with the right person? There's so much like such an emotive and rich topic of discussion, isn't it? Like children, because we're brought up to think, oh, that's what you do. You go off, you get married, you know, you get jobs, you get married, you get an education. You know, there's all these things that you're told you do, and having children is one of them. You know, but I think we're at a point in history now where we can actually make a decision whether we have them or not. And but it's still like, I remember being with someone about 10 years ago who said, I was like, yeah, I don't want kids. And he was like, oh, well, that's really selfish. Like, we'd only gone on a couple of dates, but he didn't mean
Yeah.
selfish towards him, like selfish in general as a person. It's selfish to not want children. I thought, how is that selfish? Like, don't we have too many people on the planet as it is? Like, you know, like, everyone has their own thing, you know. Some people really want them. Some people really don't. Like, there's the spectrum of really not
Yeah.
really wanting them, and like,
And then maybe not, which is where I was for a long time, you know. I'm unsure. And then when my partner said, I don't want them, I thought, hang on, I don't want that decision made by someone else. So, you know how you said like that, he said that was selfish. It's not selfish, it's absolutely your decision, you know. It's who else have you got to answer to with that decision? You
yeah,
know.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And I realized that that was something that I do want, and I still do want. And you know, however that happens or doesn't happen, it is something I'd like to have happen in my life.
yeah,
And onwards we go. But
yeah.
yeah,
Me and my husband so I'm going to be 40 this year, and my
me
husband really
too.
wants to have I really
High five.
so I mean, yeah, my husband really wants to have children, and you know, a part of me does, because you know, that love that you would have for a child, but then that love is also really scary, that knowledge that you love something that much and then it just goes off into the world and there's literally nothing you can do to protect it, you know. Like, my nieces, sometimes when I think about things that they have to go through, it's like it's, I feel like my heart is shredding, and to have that for your own child is like, you know, and the responsibility and the sort of um the fear of not being a good parent, you know, is just, there's just so much around that. And then the sort of worry about, well, I'm 40 now, or I'm going to be 40, and what, you know, you do worry that, what if you don't have many eggs left, you know? It's just, I don't know. It's all,
Well, I would say to anybody who was same age as us, 39, nearly 40, going 41, 42, you know, that I think it's a falsity to say, oh, at 35, that's it, you know, it's all downhill from here. I don't agree with that. Um, yes, I know the stats that the egg supply reduces, um, but I've also watched lots of women who are having regular periods, regular ovulation, you know, either naturally, well, yeah, naturally having babies at around that age, um, or by IVF, either way. And it can be a really scary place for somebody who wants children at this age. But I feel absolutely confident that if you are loving on your body, if you are nourishing your body, if you are exploring, like I said, all those things that kind of might come up around it, and your relationship and things like that, then the space becomes a space of open and receptive to receive, you know. And yeah, I also know that's not the same for everyone, you know. I can't say that for every woman, but I've watched a lot of women with no problems and a lot of women who have a little bit of self-care time, and then ta-da, yeah, it's
you know, it reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend a couple of years ago. We were talking about this, and she's about I think she's nearly 10 years older than me. And she said, oh, none of that's true, about the sort of scarcity of eggs and how much more
Mm.
difficult it is the older you get. So she said, oh, that's not true. She said, I'm nearly 50 and I know that I'm still giving off wonderful eggs. I was like, how do you know? Thinking, oh, she must have had a test, or she's seen her eggs or something. She said, oh no, I just know, just every month a wonderful egg is just coming and I was like, wow, okay, that's all you need then, just the knowledge that, yep, I've got these
Yeah.
wonderful eggs ready to be fertilized.
Oh, bless. But I guess something that I talk about a lot in my clinic and stuff is you do only need just one egg, one high quality egg, you know, and we have many, 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 many in our body.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a nice
How's it,
thing.
so I wanted to actually talk about, we're obviously in unprecedented times at the moment with this coronavirus thing, aren't we? And
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
um, like how as a businesswoman who rely solely on the income that you can generate, you're not relying on, my employer gives me money no matter what's happening with corona, so I don't have that survival fear, but I know like that some people do. Like I've heard that people are losing their jobs because small businesses, restaurants or whatever, they're closing, they're
Mm,
laying people
mm,
off, and it's
mm.
just really scary. Like, how are you feeling in these times?
Well, I'm an optimist, forever the optimist. So I'm kind of in a positive mindset with it. Sometimes it kind of the fear comes up, and then I try and do something with it, whether it be really feel it, or I went out and had a bit of a bonfire the other day and drummed for just kind of feel it, moving it through. But so I guess for me, it's had to be slight adaptation. So I have a clinic in London with a contractor, so I have to pay that room rent monthly, whether I have clients or not. And my clients have started to cancel and saying they're going to rebook after all of this is done. And the building itself hasn't been told by the government to close, and therefore they're going to try and keep it open because they have overheads. We're in a chain of they're paying, I'm paying them, people are paying me, and I completely understand it. It's tricky, but I understand it. So I've put a few things online. So I'm running an online sister circle, um, drum healing and guided meditation tomorrow morning. I'm trying to keep my drum gatherings going, but outside, so that there's space to move, be apart from each other. I really feel that at this time, um, connecting with other humans is vital. Um, Upping your self-care is vital, whatever that looks like, whatever's going to relax you, whatever's going to ground you, whatever's going to make you feel unplugged from the daily news feed of huge amounts of fear, which is all over the place.
Mm.
So I'm doing things like that, but in the clinic where I'm paying, um, I'm unsure what to do at the moment. I'm considering doing a reduced rate, try and get people to go for their self-care. Um, Yesterday, a lady had cancelled, but somebody else had bought a drum and wanted to collect it. So she came into the clinic, um, and we did a swap. She gave me reflexology, which let go of all the tension I'd been holding, really grounded me, really allowed me to feel connected to another human. And then I gave her some Reiki and drum healing. And we just made sure that we had the things in place that supported us. So we had hand sanitizer. It was only me touching the door frames and opening the doors for people, so it wasn't any kind of, people are quite worried about catching it from doors. All my towels are changed for every client, or the couch roll and things like that. So I think as long as, if you can get out and you've got no cough or fever, perhaps it is beneficial to go out and be around other people, you know. I know that's probably against government guidance, but I do mean in a way that stops you feeling all alone
Yeah,
and brings love and joy and peace into your heart, you know. So
yeah,
particularly the outside drum, I'm doing it for free because I just feel like people need to be around each other and move some of the feelings, feel them and shift them, because otherwise in, I don't know, 2 years time we're going to get a load of people really sick from holding in all the fear.
yeah. You know, the
Mm,
National Trust have opened up all their sort of outdoor spaces for free during this time, because they're
mm,
saying that it's still, you know, they've closed their indoor spaces, but they're like, it's important to be outside and to have somewhere to go. And it is true. And, you know, I know that you were talking earlier on before we sort of came on about the importance of being in nature at this time. And it is just so true, you know, that the ability to be outside with the plants, with the air, with the earth, it just reminds you that, you know, we are so much bigger than a virus. We are so much bigger than having to come to a standstill and being asked to be at home. And, you know,
mm,
there is no real reason why healthy people shouldn't be going out, because we're not going to build an immunity if we all stay home. You know, as soon as we start going out again, it's gonna, you know, it'll still be there. It's not going to vanish overnight. um, I mean, obviously, we have to be careful because there are the vulnerable people. You know, my dad is 84. I do worry when I come home, like, what might I have brought home to pass on to him, because he's living with us at the moment. Um, but it's just like, the only way I can describe it is, you know, around Christmas, I had 2 weeks off over Christmas and New Year from work. And I spent a lot of time going to my allotment and just time. And I was having all these ideas and thinking, oh my God, this is so wonderful. 2020 is going to be amazing. It's going to be massive. And like, I was having all these ideas for Awaken the Goddess, just for life in general. And I was like, I just absolutely raring to go. But going back to work, it lasted for a little bit, and now it's come to where in March, only in March, and you know what you were saying earlier about flatlining. I kind of feel like with all my ideas and my creativity and my ability to give has flatlined, because it's all these worries and the sort of the day to day and the hustle and the going on the
mm,
tube and
mm,
dealing with, you know, central government cuts, and then you're having to cut your department and all these things. You know, it's just, but that time over Christmas, where even in the cold and it's a bit miserable, and I'm going to my allotment, I'm working in the earth, I'm looking at the plants and looking at, even in the cold, these little weeds are growing, and like, oh, what plant might that be?
mm,
You know, there's just something about being out there that is nothing, it's like nothing else on the planet.
mm. Absolutely. And that sense of connected to the earth, like shoes off, fingers in it, in the ground, you know. I went outside yesterday, the other day, Wednesday, because I was feeling it was rising in me, and it hadn't done well, it hadn't done, and it was the first time it was really kind of gripping. And I went out in the garden, and it was gently raining, and I sat on a camping chair between these two little trees, and just had a little fire and drummed, and I sat there for ages. And even when I stopped drumming, I sat there and watched the fire burn out, and I just felt like I could come back into the house where the news is played, and the conversation is, it's not fear mongering, but it's there, you know, it's nearly everyday topic, constant topic. um, and I felt more me again. I felt more grounded, connected. I felt more capable to continue to deal with what's going on, with these shifts and these changes that we have no choice over, you know. And I think that will help my immune system, you know. I letting go of that fear, letting go of that panic, because I work with people's bodies, and it sticks in us.
Yeah.
It really sticks in us.
When you were saying, that the sort of the transition between being outside and then coming into the news again, that's exactly what I thought. The fact that, we need to be able to step away, because when we're watching that, you're right, it's not intentional fear mongering, but it is, because the news is there to get people to watch it. So they want to say stuff because you're concerned, and then you watch it, and then it starts building as this spiral, and it turns into a frenzy. But the thing is, if you step away from that, it's not your reality anymore. And when it's not your reality, the chances of you letting that infection or that virus in reduces massively compared to when it's all over your consciousness.
Yeah. Well, yesterday in clinic, having my reflexology treatment and then giving my fertility massage treatment, no news, nobody talking to me about it. It was just beautiful, a sacred place, and I feel like our whole nervous systems were allowed to just soften. And yeah, but I think that's one of the reasons that I've not been constantly up in this state of fear. I recognize it because when I left teaching and when I left my ex-boyfriend, the fear was there. It gripped me more than I've ever felt fear in my life. To leave him and go out and live on my own was something I'd never done ever, and it was scary. To leave teaching and to not have that constant income, good high income, was petrifying. And I can look back at it and go, well, what was all that fuss about? I feel calm and good, and things have worked out, and I feel like it did not serve me. It held me back. And perhaps with this virus, being scared about it, being up in that sense of constant panic, what will that do for me? It will not serve me. It will probably make my mental health crumble, So I choose not to do that, and to be connected to people, and in a safe way, obviously, and to receive, and to get the care that I need, to meet my needs, And I think that everybody should be doing that. Everybody, particularly if you're really stressed out, take some time, just go outside without your shoes on and find some grass. Lay on the floor, look up at the sky. Allow yourself to sink in. Turn your phone off. Allow yourself to sink into a space of being again. And yeah, it will do wonders for you, for moods and tension. And yeah, that's what I feel.
Yeah. No, you're so right. Melonie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today.
Pleasure. And I do hope my autumnal PMT kind of rambling makes sense. I know that it kind of goes when I'm at this point.
No, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. It was just, I thought it flowed beautifully. Could you tell people how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can find me at 58 South Moulton Street. It's called 58 Wellbeing. That's where I have my clinic. You can find me at meloniesirett.com if you're a parent or a woman or an organisation that might require puberty or menstrual materials or support. A mum of a girl or a woman with menstrual or fertility or rite of passage needs. And you can find me at thedrumwoman.com if you like drums and you want to gather with women and drum or make a drum or buy a drum. And I'm on Instagram as The Drum Woman and as Melonie Sirett, and the same on Facebook. So it's quite easy. The Drum Woman and Melonie Sirett.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Oh, pleasure, absolute pleasure. Thank you, Sameena.